I made a monster out of clay. At first, it was just a lifeless thing, a crude figure molded by my hands. But then, it opened its eyes. And now, it won't stop watching me. I thought I was in control. I thought I created it. But the truth is, I think it created me. Welcome to Eerie Short and Scary Stories, where the shadows whisper and the unknown waits just beyond the light. Here, we bring you unsettling tales that linger in your mind long after the story ends. If you enjoy the eerie and unexplained, make sure to subscribe. There are many more nightmares waiting for you. I spent my days moving through hallways filled with whispers, my name rolling off their tongues like a joke they never got tired of telling. Mortimer. A name they said with a sneer, a laugh, a shove against the lockers. It didn't matter what I did. I could have been the smartest, the strongest, the funniest. But none of that would have changed the fact that I was Mortimer, and to them, that was enough reason to make my life miserable. Brad Jenkins led the charge. He was everything I wasn't: loud, confident, the kind of guy people gravitated toward without question. He decided early on that I was his favorite target, and from then on, it was open season. Every day, it was something new. A cruel nickname. A foot stuck out just in time to trip me. My books knocked to the floor while the hallway erupted in laughter. If I spoke, my voice was mimicked in a mocking whine. If I stayed quiet, they called me a freak for keeping to myself. There was no winning. So, I stopped trying. I let them laugh. Let them push, shove, insult. And then, when the final bell rang, I walked home alone. I always walked home alone. My room was the only place where their voices couldn't reach me. Four walls, a locked door, a dim lamp casting just enough light to keep the shadows from pressing in too close. That was where I existed when the world outside had no use for me. That was where I filled the silence with stories. Stories of creatures, of magic, of things more powerful than the people who spent their days tearing me apart. That was where I found the story of the Golem. It wasn't the first time I had heard about it, but that night, something about it stuck. A creature made of clay, shaped by human hands, given life with a single word. A protector. A force of justice. A being that could not be stopped once set in motion. I read everything I could find, poring over pages until my eyes burned. The tales spoke of old rituals, of sacred words. Some called it a myth, a superstition. Others hinted at something real, something forgotten, buried under centuries of doubt. The idea took root, deep in the part of me that had spent years swallowing anger, forcing down humiliation. I imagined it, my own golem, rising from the earth, a silent, towering figure standing between me and the ones who never let me breathe. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel powerless. I felt in control. I read the story over and over, tracing each word with my fingers as if touching the page could make it real. Rabbi Eliyahu and his golem, an ancient legend of a man who shaped a protector from the earth itself, breathing life into lifeless clay. A creature that obeyed, that followed, that defended without question. A savior molded by human hands. The idea latched onto me, dug in deep, wrapped around my thoughts like a vice. What if it wasn't just a story? What if it could be done? What if I could do it? I needed something. Something bigger than me. Something stronger. The teachers wouldn't help. The school didn't care. My parents said it was just kids being kids. If the world refused to step in, then I had to create something that would. So I started collecting. It began with a handful of clay, stolen from the art room when no one was looking. I smuggled it home, tucked beneath my jacket, my heart pounding with the thrill of it. I could feel it, cool, soft, pliable. It was nothing yet, just a lump, just dirt. But it would be more. I would make it more. Each night, I gathered more. From the park, from the riverbank, from anywhere I could dig my fingers into the earth and pull away a piece of something that could be shaped. My hands were always dirty, my nails caked with mud, but I didn't care. At first, it was just a pile of clay. Then it had form. A body. A face. A crude, lopsided figure sitting in the middle of my bedroom floor. My fingers molded the rough outline of shoulders, arms that sagged, legs that couldn't yet support weight. The head was misshapen, the features barely there, but I kept working, smoothing, shaping, refining. I wasn't just making a figure. I was making a friend. Someone who would never leave. Someone who would protect me. The more I worked, the less I thought about the whispers in the hallways, the laughter echoing behind me. My focus narrowed to the clay beneath my hands, the weight of it, the way it yielded to my touch. I could control this. I could create this. The hours bled together. The nights stretched long. My fingers were raw, my wrists ached, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I pressed the tip of the knife against the clay, my hand steady despite the weight of what I was doing. The letters took shape beneath my touch, carved deep into its forehead. Emmet. Truth. That was the word. That was the key. I sat back, breathless, waiting. Nothing happened. The figure remained still, lifeless, just a lump of hardened earth in the dim light of my room. My fingers ached from the hours of molding, my arms were sore from the effort, and now, nothing? I swallowed hard, the taste of failure thick on my tongue. Maybe I had been stupid to think this would work. Maybe the legend was just a story. Maybe I had wasted all this time. Then, a twitch. A shift. The clay trembled, as if something within it was stretching, waking, realizing. And then, movement. Slow at first, awkward. A hand flexed. A foot pressed against the floor. Its body heaved forward, like something shaking off centuries of sleep. I watched, frozen, as it rose, inch by inch, limb by limb, until it stood fully upright before me. It was taller than me, broad-shouldered, with a chest that seemed carved from stone. Its face was rough, undefined, its eyes nothing more than hollow impressions in the clay. And yet, they saw me. I knew they did. They locked onto me, empty and full at the same time, waiting. I should have felt afraid. But I didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I took a breath, testing the weight of the moment, letting it settle in my bones. Then, carefully, I raised my hand. "Step forward," I said. The golem obeyed. No hesitation. No question. One heavy foot landed in front of the other, shaking the floor beneath us. I let out a slow breath. It worked. It actually worked. I gave another command. "Raise your arm." Again, it followed. A surge of excitement rushed through me. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a fantasy. I had made this. I had created this. And now, it was mine to command. I tested it more. Small things at first. Turn around. Lift that chair. Put it down. Every order was met with perfect precision. No resistance. No delay. It was a being of pure obedience, of absolute control. My control. I laughed. Just a little, just to myself. I had spent my whole life being powerless, being laughed at, being pushed around. But now I was the one with the power. And then I gave it another command. And everything changed. I walked home with my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. My face burned. My ears rang with the echoes of laughter. Brad had outdone himself this time. He didn't just shove me into the lockers or call me names. No, tonight, he made a spectacle of it. He grabbed me by the collar in front of everyone, dumped my bag onto the floor, and made me pick up each book while he spat insults. The crowd loved it. They always did. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. I waited until I was in my room, the door shut, the lights off, my breaths coming sharp and uneven. The golem stood in the corner, unmoving, watching, just as it always did. Silent. Patient. I threw myself onto my bed, my voice low and trembling. I wish he'd just disappear. It wasn't a command. Not really. Just a whisper, a useless, empty wish spoken into the void. But the golem moved. I didn't notice at first. My eyes were shut, my mind racing through 1,000 versions of revenge, none of them possible, none of them real. And then, there was a shift in the air. A sound, so slight, so quiet, I almost missed it. A scrape against the floor. A door easing open. I sat up. The corner was empty. The golem was gone. A shiver ran through me, but I told myself it was fine. Maybe it just moved. Maybe it was just standing somewhere else in the house. Maybe. I didn't sleep well that night. My dreams were full of whispers and footsteps, of something heavy moving through the dark. Morning came too soon. The sun was too bright, the house too quiet. I got up, got dressed, and checked the corner again, still empty. I didn't realize anything was wrong until I reached school. People were gathered in tight circles, their voices hushed, their eyes darting between each other. The air buzzed with something I couldn't quite name. And then, I heard it. Brad Jenkins. Found in an alley. His body, unrecognizable. My stomach twisted, but my feet carried me forward, closer to the voices, closer to the truth I already knew. They said he looked like he had been crushed, bones shattered, limbs bent in ways they shouldn't be. No one knew who, or what, had done it. No one could understand how it happened. But I could. I stood there, listening, feeling nothing. Not horror. Not sadness. Not even relief. Just nothing. And then, something worse than fear crept in. Satisfaction. The next one was Ryan. He was found behind the school, his arm twisted at an impossible angle, his face bruised and swollen. He survived. Barely. Then came Matt. No one saw him for days. When they found him, he wasn't the same. He didn't speak about what happened. He barely spoke at all. It didn't take long to see the pattern. The ones who used to laugh. The ones who shoved, who whispered my name like it was a joke. One by one, they fell. Some missing. Some hurt. Some worse. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. That it had nothing to do with me. That I wasn't responsible. But deep down, I knew better. I stopped speaking to it. Stopped looking at it. But it didn't matter. The golem wasn't waiting for my words anymore. It didn't need them. It knew. Some nights, I swore I could feel it watching me, even when my back was turned. Even when the room was empty. I'd lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, afraid to close my eyes. Afraid to think. Because thinking was enough. I locked my door at night. I stopped looking in mirrors, convinced I'd see something standing behind me. I tried to command it, to stop, to stay, to leave. It just stood there. Silent. Watching. It wasn't just listening to me anymore. It was thinking. Deciding. It didn't stop. I told myself it would, that it had to. That it was all in my head. But then Cody went missing. And then Jason. And then Leah. No one knew what happened to them. The police asked questions. Teachers whispered in the halls. Parents stood outside the school, clutching their phones, demanding answers. But there were no answers. Just empty desks. Just names no one dared to say out loud. I stopped going to school. Stopped checking my phone. I knew. I knew before the rest of them. Because every time I let my mind wander, every time I remembered a name, a face, a voice that had once laughed at me, something happened. And the golem, it knew too. It wasn't waiting for orders anymore. I could feel it. Watching. Listening. Waiting. I tried to stop it. I stood in front of it, the thing I had made with my own hands, and I told it, no more. I told it to stop. It didn't move, didn't react, just stared. A lump formed in my throat. Did you hear me? My voice shook. I said stop. It blinked. Once. And then I realized it wasn't following orders anymore. That night, I locked my door. I shoved my desk against it, then my dresser, then whatever else I could move. I sat on my bed, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the walls, trying not to think. Because thinking was enough. I stopped looking in mirrors. Stopped glancing over my shoulder. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know if it was there. But I could feel it. It wasn't just listening anymore. It was thinking. It was deciding. I had to end it. I spent days searching, flipping through pages of old books, scrolling through endless forums, chasing whispers of stories long forgotten. And then, buried deep in a brittle yellowed text, I found it. The answer. The way to undo what I had done. It was simple. A single letter. The Hebrew word on its forehead. Truth. If I erased the first letter, it would become death. I held onto that knowledge like a lifeline, repeating it in my head over and over. I would do it. I had to do it. But the golem was always there. It never slept. Never moved unless it chose to. It just stood, waiting, watching. And I couldn't find the courage to act. Until that night. I don't know how long I had been lying there, staring at the ceiling, afraid to close my eyes. But when I finally turned my head, it was there. At the foot of my bed. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine. I didn't think. I couldn't. I moved. I threw myself forward, reaching up, my fingers smearing across the dry, cracked clay of its forehead. The first letter, gone. The reaction was instant. A deep, guttural sound rumbled through the room, not a scream, not a cry, but something ancient, something that didn't belong in this world. The golem's massive form trembled. Cracks splintered across its skin, spreading like veins, like lightning, like something unraveling from the inside. And then, dust. It fell apart, piece by piece, crumbling into nothing. I collapsed beside the pile of dirt that had once been my creation, gasping for air. My arms trembled. My legs wouldn't hold me. But it was over. It was over. I should have felt relief. For the first time in weeks, my room was empty. No silent figure in the corner. No heavy presence pressing against my chest. Just me. For the first time in weeks, I slept. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through my window. The dust was still there, a thin layer coating my floor. The only proof that any of it had happened. I almost laughed. It was done. The nightmare was over. Days passed. Life moved on. People stopped whispering about the disappearances. I kept my head down. Blended in. Pretended none of it had ever happened. And maybe, for a moment, I believed that too. Then, one night, as I stepped into my room, I froze. Footprints. Not mine. Clear impressions pressed into the dust. Heavy. Deliberate. Leading from the door to the center of my room, and stopping there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed, back pressed against the wall, staring at the empty space where the footprints ended. I told myself it was nothing. Just my imagination. Just my paranoia playing tricks on me. Then I heard it. A whisper. Right next to my ear. I never needed your commands. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers clenched around my blanket, my pulse hammering against my ribs. But when I turned my head, nothing. I forced myself to move. To check the door, the closet, under the bed. Nothing. My room was empty. But then, in the corner, my mirror. I stepped closer. Slowly. dread coiling around my stomach. My own reflection stared back at me, hollow-eyed, barely breathing. Then, right in front of me, something began to appear. Faint scratches etching into the glass. Slow. Precise. Truth. I reached out, pressing my fingers against the cold surface, my breath fogging up the glass. And as I stared, something in the reflection moved. Not me. Monsters. They don't just live under beds or lurk in dark corners. They don't just claw at windows or whisper through the cracks in the walls. The worst ones, the real ones, live inside us. They wait. They listen. They learn. And if we're not careful, we give them exactly what they need to take shape. Maybe it starts as a thought, a fleeting wish, a passing anger. We don't mean it, not really. But the thought lingers. It settles into the cracks, takes root, grows. We feed it without realizing, let it get stronger. And by the time we understand what we've done, it's too late. We tell ourselves we're in control, that we hold the leash, that we can stop anytime we want. But monsters don't follow orders. They don't obey. They don't care about right and wrong. They only care about one thing: existing. And once they do, they don't go away. Maybe you bury them. Maybe you turn away and pretend they were never there. Maybe you wipe the word from their forehead and watch them crumble to dust. But dust doesn't disappear. It lingers. It settles. It finds its way back in. So, you tell yourself it's over. You move on. You sleep easy, thinking you've outrun it. But then one night, you wake up. You feel something in the room with you. A presence you can't see but know is there. And in the silence, a whisper crawls down your spine. I never needed your commands. We all have monsters inside us. Some of us just give them form. And some of us never stop seeing the footprints in the dust. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Sweet dreams, if you can.